Many people have difficulty with English, and there are many reasons why that is true. The first being that English is not a language. It might sound strange to you, but English was not created by a special group of people for their particular use. English is a collection of language. And the main reason for that is that England was constantly invaded by different groups of people. The Romans, the Germans, the French, and so forth. They ruled for long times, sometimes hundreds of years, and left their language behind in England when they left. The main root of English is really German and Latin. Now, there's other reasons why English is such a complex language, and there is difficulty in learning it. English is not just one form. English, in reality, is three forms of English. There is the written English, the spoken English, and the accented English. I will now try to explain what I mean by that. English, in its written form, is written by 26 letters of the Roman alphabet. Each letter in that alphabet has a sound, and that works very well for Latin languages. But it does not work well for English because English contains 45 sounds. Now, in order to make those other sounds that the letters do not give English, there's something which we call phonograms, meaning that we combine 2 to 4 letters to make one sound. Let me give you an example. The word laugh is spelled L-A-U-G-H. You do not pronounce letter per letter because it would sound impossible. But the phonogram is L-A-U-G-H. The A-U is pronounced as A, and the G-H is pronounced as F. So in order to be able to read and spell English, you need to learn the phonograms. I will give you an example of that. The second thing is that language, so English language, is a spoken language. It is not spoken as it is written. For example, I would say, "What is your name?" This is the written word. But I would say it, "What's your name?" You notice that it's not the same because in English we blend letters, we put emphasis on certain words and de-emphasize certain words. English in reality is a time-based language, meaning it is not spoken with the same emphasis on each word. Depending on the word, its position in this sentence is given emphasis and de-emphasis. This creates a rhythm. So English is a time-based language, meaning it has rhythm. not only do the sentences have rhythm, also the words have rhythm. We emphasize one particular syllable in every word and de-emphasize the other syllables. It has a rhythm. For example, I would say, attention, where T-I-O-N is emphasized. Attention. And so you need to speak English with the proper rhythm and the proper emphasis. That can only be learned by hearing the word pronounced by an English-speaking person. And so is the rhythm of spoken English. It can only be learned by listening, not by reading, because reading has a different sound than the spoken language. And also, there's a third form of English, which is called the accented English. That is determined by the region that the language is spoken in. For example, American English sounds different and is spoken different than England English, and Australian English, and New Zealand English. They all have certain sounds that are different. And you need to really understand all English. You need to really understand all the accents. Now, there's only one way you can do this, as I have mentioned before, is only by listening. So you need to know all three forms of English: written English, spoken English, and accented English to be able to understand it. Note the other complexity of English is that English is not an original language. It hasn't got its own origin, but we borrow words from other languages, and we often speak those words with the sounds and the accents of the original language. For example, liaison, liaison, which is French. So there's a lot of French words in English that you have to know the French pronunciation. And there's Greek words like photograph and psychology. You have to be able to speak it as is originally spoken and pronounced in the original language. This is an example of what it takes, why English language is so complex. So I teach all three forms of English, but I choose a standard form, a most accepted form of English that is used in broadcasting, and that is the Midwestern accent, which is what you hear now. It's that form of English that is preferred to learn.